Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Illuva Talks. My name is Andrew Wall, host and executive producer here at Illuvium, and I'm excited to do this one. I had this killer conversation with this guy. He works over at Splinterlands, that crypto game that has, the most active players out there. Well, anyway, he's now the CTO, and he's going to be here to discuss with me all sorts of wildly interesting topics, deep insights. Let's go over what's going to be in this episode, then I'll bring in the super genius for you guys to meet for yourselves. So today it's all about Web3 Gaming. And the topics we're covering today is basically the whole flow of getting players into the space from affiliate and influencer marketing. Once they're in, we're going to talk about that new player experience that keeps the player there early and then hopefully moves them into retaining that player long term. That's how we build those big, juicy player bases, those hopefully millions, tens of millions, and get those mega games here in the Web3 gaming space. We're going to talk through that process all the way through with a guy that is working on one of, if not the most successful game in the space today. And here's your disclaimer, friends. Everybody loves a disclaimer. This is not financial advice. Do your own research. Talk to your own financial advisor, etc., etc. We're just leading the conversation about Web3 gaming. And I hope that you learn at least a few new things you didn't already know in this episode. That is my promise, or your money back. All right, my guest today is the CTO of Splinterlands, and his name is Patrick. Patrick, get in here, buddy. What's up, man?
Hey, how you doing? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you, man. You sound good. I like that guitar back there, the Bill Murray art and everything.
Yeah. You like that? Yeah, that's my Life Aquatic Steve Zissou art, man. I'm a big fan of all Wes Anderson films. So you'll probably see a lot more of this going up over the next couple of months too, because I'm just starting to collect as much as I can. But it's been a while since we talked. I'm really, really excited to speak with you again.
I'm excited about it too. And let's just get straight into it because I just found out you and I have a common background in influencer marketing. And so obviously, the crypto industry and really all marketing across the board has shifted over to affiliate marketing and influencer marketing. And for those of you out there that are not necessarily familiar, if you've ever seen, for example, anyone tell you about a product on Amazon and link you on Amazon, they're probably using the largest affiliate program in the world, which is the Amazon Associates program. And I'm a member of this. I've sold 27,000 products on Amazon as an affiliate personally with like almost $5 million in sales. And the reason why I bring this up is you guys experience affiliate marketing every single day. Anytime that podcast tells you to check out NordVPN, anytime that influencer told you to sign up for FTX, oopsie. That was affiliate marketing where they got a cut back to them for you joining and using that product. And so the crypto gaming industry and the Web3 industry obviously is benefiting right now from influencer marketing and affiliate marketing. And moving forward, this, as far as Illuvium is concerned, the marketing team is concerned here, this is our primary method of marketing. So I want to ask you, what are the best ways to provide incentives to influencers, community members, and the media to refer players to Web3 games? What are your thoughts on that, amigo?
Oh, yeah. So this is a great question, actually. Over the last couple of years, we've seen a real shift in the things that make actionable intelligence or insight, right? So what we've noticed now is that a lot of the users, or let's say actually the people that are driving the users to the source are reacting to what we call data-driven narratives. Does that make sense? So they're using information that they can compile to drive a narrative forward. A lot of these things that we see that are narratives, especially when it comes to crypto, and one of the things that has a big impact on the way that crypto is shared is value drivers. Value drivers are things that create value in a couple of different methods, but the two big ones are going to be social currency. So it gives you something to talk about with other people so that you can seem enlightened when you talk to them. And the other one is just actual value and asset value, right? So what they're going
Here,
to look
let's hit
for.
pause right there to make sure everybody is there with us on this conversation. So when you say data-driven narratives, are we talking about that NFT YouTuber popping up and being like, let's talk about this collection on OpenSea. Here's where the floor was at. I think this is going to pump at XYZ time. They pull up the charts on the token. They're doing some, astrology for men, aka aka some work on trading view and some charting. And then they tell you, so therefore, I think this collection is going to pump or something like that. Is that what you mean by data-driven
Oh
narratives?
yeah, absolutely. So that's exactly what I'm talking about, and that's how you build a narrative now when you're trying to speculate, right? So what this comes down to is you see a lot of these people speculate. Like we saw Mr. Wonderful ended up getting $15 million to promote FTX, right? So
Yeah.
what is his narrative? Well, they've done a really good job in the past. They should do a really good job in the future, right? Believe it or not, this is actually a very well observed, at least in markets, because you got to remember, like crypto is a marketplace for the most part. It's an open, decentralized marketplace where you can buy and trade assets of any type with anywhere and anyone in the world, right? So when you're talking about markets, the typical thing people will do is exactly that. It's they go and look at the charts, they look at what happened in the past, and they try to see what's going to happen in the future, or try to speculate if that same type of action is going to happen in the future. So you see a lot of this stuff. And so when you're looking at these data-driven narratives, a lot of times influencers will use that as their backstop, or really as the core piece of what message they're trying to deliver to their audience. They have to be convincing.
Yeah. And as an influencer, and I've made thousands of videos myself as an influencer, you need fresh content every day. Well, what's the freshest content you can get? Hey, look, the numbers changed a little bit on this thing. Let me create some narrative around those numbers in order to drive a story forward, bullish, bearish, or otherwise. Usually, it's one extreme or the other. So with this being sort of the landscape that we're in right now, you over at Splinterlands, you guys are doing fantastic. Have you guys disclosed how many concurrent players you have right now at Splinterlands, or like what was the latest number that you released? I don't want to put you on for some, secret data, but Splinterlands, if you guys are not already familiar, I was blown away with the numbers you shared with me last time. How many people are playing this game right now, bro?
We got about 250,000 people, daily active users. We also create about 14 million transactions a day, which is more transactions than all of Ethereum. We just crossed over the 3 billion battles fought on chain, but we are now crossing into the 4 billion battles fought on chain, which is
That's
amazing.
great.
I mean, these are some very, very. We typically have more players on our platform every day than there are people using decentralized exchanges on low volume days, which I think is phenomenal.
That's great. I mean, a 250,000 daily active users deep in this bear market. You guys are clearly doing something right. So I have to ask you then, on the influencer marketing side, how do you acquire quality gamers? You mentioned you have those daily active users, the people that actually like Splinterlands. How do you get the quality gamers to come in if you're doing affiliate marketing? When most of the time, things like affiliate marketing or sponsorships, when you're working with an influencer, it's an entirely monetary hook. They get money if they bring somebody to you. They get money if they talk about you. And a lot of the time, they're talking about the money-making opportunities in games. Doesn't that bring in users that don't stick around and become a daily active user? How do you get the quality leads to come in to Splinterlands, in this case, the Splinterlands ecosystem, and actually like it and actually become a part of the foundation of your community?
Oh God, that's a great question. So think about this, right? The one thing you don't want to have, and let's just talk about where you get your user acquisition from. So we found that we've actually made some internal influencers from just from the Splinterlands community. People have actually taken upon themselves to start broadcasting and to start sharing stuff, streaming, right? So that's been great. That having homegrown influencers who are a part of the game, they're going to be your most loyal, but also if they ever feel slated, they're also going to be the most toxic sometimes. But regardless, that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to build influences through, obviously our own data-driven narratives, right? But I would say if you're coming from influencers or referrals that are from the outside, there's always a value add. And usually it's us giving something away where people can, participate for free. It's going to be no overhead for them to get into the game. There's got to be some kind of like, give me something as an incentive, right? The one thing you really, really want to avoid, though, is your upper level players extracting all of the value from the lower level players, right? Because as people start to come into the game, if they're just losing all the time, if they're just getting all the value extracted from them, and it's only benefiting a couple people at the top, then you have to stop that, because you will experience a growth cap or a plateau that you won't be able to get out of. Because what will happen is you'll create a dependency on the top level players to only have the incentive to bring in the lower level players, but then the lower level players just don't stick. So you don't have any long-term retention. So in order to do that, we tiered everything. We actually came up with a rank reward system that allows our players to kind of be more segregated in the actual gameplay. But that was a learning experience.
Got it. I mean, obviously, when it comes to tournaments, prize pools, those sorts of things, generally prize pool based mechanics, the folks at the top win the majority of the prize pool, and the folks at the bottom don't get anything or barely get anything at all, of course. So I have to ask you, so much of the time, when folks in the Web3 gaming industry are talking about rewards, they're generally referring to rewards that can be redeemed for money or some sort of monetary benefit. So I have to ask you, is it essential to provide rewards when you're trying to refer people to a game, you're trying to bring them in from influencer marketing? Is it essential to provide rewards or incentives that are worth money? Or are entertainment incentives good enough? So what I mean by that is, I don't know. You might promise somebody, I don't know, $10 is an NFT worth $10 if they sign up and play for XYZ. Or the non-monetary one might be, hey, you can unlock 20 emotes that are not worth anything, but they're cool. So how important is it to provide money incentives versus non-money and purely entertainment incentives when referring players to a game?
There's two particular cohorts that I see right now that are important to try to understand and identify. There's the people that are coming from the crypto community that are crypto familiar, and there's people that are coming from the gaming community. Mm-hmm. And there's two different stickiness factors to each of those, right? So if you think about something that's coming from the crypto community, they're going to be more value driven, asset driven, right? So the way that they become involved, or the way that they get brought into the game, is because they see a game that they can play that's not boring, that allows them to contribute, but also at the same time earn, right? So what you have is a competitive landscape on the crypto front that says, okay, you have to create these value incentives in the forms of staking or rewards earnings, or being able to go and make even things that are not exactly what we do, but part of the market around what we do would be things like having liquidity positions, for example, and allowing people to stake on third party, decentralized exchanges, or be able to trade tokens on exchange, right? Or trade NFTs on something like Wax or OpenSea. Then you have the gamers, and the gamers, gaming is the largest media segment there is. I mean, it's larger than any other type of entertainment, category there is. So, what I would really hope to see is that the game itself has enough stickiness to it where it's just fun. And people who like to play with friends or be a part of guilds find value in that, because it's something that brings us together, which is something that, we all kind of live in this digital age now, or at least, people who are working, from home, or people who spend most of their time gaming. This is the world that we live in, and this is where we find relationships. This is also how we interact with each other. So in order to create that type of stickiness takes a long time. I think that we started very simply with what we have as a platform, but it's something that you have to continually build on. And so those two different types of perspectives, I think, are really important to understand. And I would say, you guys probably see the same thing, right? It's like you're trying to build something that is very, very elegant and robust and has the stickiness factors to it, which is really hard to do in crypto. It's really hard to do with a blockchain. So that's the way I see it. But I think too that we'll probably start to see more of I hope to see more of the gaming influence or more of the gaming perspective step in rather than the crypto. It should be more about trying to find the right audience because the games are actually fun.
Yeah, I mean, degens are going to degen, right? So they're always going to be looking for the next financial opportunity. And maybe it was metaverse and, altcoins, let's say, in the last bull run. Who knows? The next bull run, it might be something else. It could be tokenized real estate, or God only knows. And then they'll go degen on that. So the people that participate in that way are transient. And I don't view them as being, maybe they're useful temporarily, but they cause as much damage on the way out as they do provide benefit on the way in. If they're buying up whatever it is in your economy and then suddenly liquidating all of a sudden at some point, I feel like it's a zero-sum opportunity, let's say. And maybe some of those folks are retained and actually enjoy your product, or your games experience and stick around, but most of them don't. So that leads us to the new player experience. You guys have obviously nailed that in some way or another. If you have 250,000 people playing every day, clearly you're bringing people in and they're sticking around. I want to talk to you about that because we just launched our second beta at Illuvium, the Illuvium Overworld beta. I'm going to play a video real quick because I'm about to cough right now. Let's take a quick break. I'm going to show you this video I produced because I'm going to make you watch it.
All right.
We're going to be right back. We're going to talk about the new player experience, and we're going to talk about retaining players so that hopefully Splinterlands and Illuvium, we can start getting up into millions of daily active users, tens of millions, to become leaders in this space. Check this video out, bro. Let me know what you think.
All right, man.
Illuvium is building the world's first interoperable blockchain games, including Illuvium Overworld, Arena, and Zero, where you can play and own your assets across multiple video games. Illuvium Overworld is a free-to-play, open-world collection game available on PC and Mac. Explore a shattered world, collect critical resources, and capture mysterious Illuvials to become the most dominant ranger in Illuvium. Avoid deadly hazards as you search for valuable resources that your drone collects. These resources include shards to capture Illuvials, gemstones to craft and upgrade gear, and consumables to boost your ranger and Illuvials. Illuvium Overworld presents the exclusive challenge to battle and capture Illuvials. You must enter an encounter and defeat the opposing team to try to capture an Illuvial. If you achieve victory, you can battle your new Illuvial in the arena or sell it on the Illuvidex, our official market exchange. Enhance your kit, armaments, drone, and Illuvials in order to overcome more challenging battles in higher stage regions. Craft and upgrade your helmet, jetpack, boots, and weapon to better traverse the overworld. Forge more powerful armaments and armor to battle in the arena, and don't forget to upgrade your drone. Your goal is to capture rarer and more powerful Illuvials to climb the leaderboard. Free-to-play players can fully experience Illuvium Overworld's breathtaking gameplay. Yet, they will not be able to access higher stage regions that require fuel to enter. Fuel is acquired by developing your land in Illuvium Zero, or simply purchase fuel on the Illuvidex. The choice is yours. To experience Illuvium Overworld for yourself, register for access at play.illuvium.io/overworld.
All right, you guys are asking how you can get beta access. Really simple. Go to the website, play.illuvium.io/overworld. You can check out more about Illuvium Overworld there. The page looks like this, and what you do is you register for the beta. Enter your information, and we are handing out beta invitations by the thousands right now. So thank you to everybody who's been participating in that. Look, we're trying to bring new players in right now. Splinterlands has tons of new players. We're trying to catch up, all right? We're going to hit 250,000 daily active users. Then you're going to be like, oh, bro, we're going to hit 500K. And then we're going to battle it up to 1 million. Let's do this together. So let's talk about new player experience. Once you've got people interested, And once they're coming in, what are the essential elements of a fantastic experience, new player experience in Web3 gaming? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh gosh. Okay, so this is I mean, to be honest, especially when you're going through a bear market like this and you're trying to encapsulate people, you have to have some built-in, I would say, benefits to the new players that come in, right? So one of the things that we did early on in Splinterlands was we have the ability, like, we're a card game, right? So what happens is as new players come in and, they're able to buy a card pack based on whatever edition we're on at that point in time. And over time, what happens is the base level cards begin to disappear because people start burning them into higher level cards. So it could take 10 level ones to create a level 2, right? So what happens is you get more of this trading card experience where you can hold on to your packs. They can gain value over time because those cards become rarer and rarer. So you have some built-in value drivers that help new players along. But then it also comes down to just constantly putting out new features. So in the last 6 months, every Tuesday, we do our large releases for the actual Splinterlands game. And in there, we're putting out basically new features, new card sets, new abilities, new rule sets, which is also very important to the game. So it's just a constant. I mean, almost every week there's something new that's coming out. Just this last week, we actually put out our land. We call it land 0.5 because it's not our full land experience. But we also released, I think when we were talking last time, Splinterlands had released its first EVM compatible NFTs called Rooney. And Rooney gameplay, we have a bridge that allows us to go from Ethereum into Hive where Splinterlands exists and to be able to play back and forth. So those types of operations are almost a constant. We are constantly developing and releasing new things all the time, which keeps people engaged. And it's easy for us to give them updates all the time, and it keeps us engaged with the audience as well. So I think that's a key factor. I think,
nonstop new content, nonstop updates is number one. That makes sense. Once people are, let's say, in the game and they're new, and they're just entering Splinterlands, tell me the secrets. What are the things? What's that aha moment that players have as a new player where they go, oh my God, I get it. This is why Splinterlands is awesome. Then they can't stop thinking about it and then they log in every day. Is there this aha moment in your gameplay loop? Is there this thing that, is there this point in the gameplay experience where players reach this point, this experience, this aha moment, and they go, damn, Splinterlands is dope. And then they're in. Help me understand that sort of insight. You're a data guy, right? You're the CTO.
Absolutely.
You're looking at this sort of data all day. So tell us the secret, damn it.
So, okay, so we have a fold that happens at a certain experience level that people get to. So we start to see this past our bronze. We really start to see players become more daily active users. It's almost like they become obsessed with the game. And I think there's a couple different things that happen, right? You start to build your deck up and you'll start to get a little invested in the game. You may spend like $50, right? That's what people are averaging when they come in and actually want to start purchasing assets, right? So the bar to get in is really, really low at Splinterlands. It doesn't cost a lot of money like it would normally on an Ethereum chain. But when people start to buy their, 5th, 6th, 7th deck, you can tell that they're actually sitting there and trying to understand how the gameplay works. The thing I think really starts to reflect on them is when they realize it's not just about the card game, it's the whole entire ecosystem. And I see you guys have actually done this too, because you guys now have a full-fledged 3-tier ecosystem that has markets. You guys have all these other things that allow you to bring value to the individuals and things that they can learn, right?
3 games, marketplace, community as well. All together in one experience, and then the governance piece that oversees all of it. Yeah.
So when they start to get involved and I would say when they actually start to get involved in the market is where we really get the most traction, because at that point they realize they can go and rent cards to play in battles or start playing in any of the championships that we have, and they don't actually have to own those cards, but they can start to really craft their deck. And so there's a lot of third-party services, too, that we notice when those third-party services start to go up in use, or when we start to see the third-party markets that we have go up in use. We also start to notice that our user retention starts to go up too. And so I could see there's a couple of people in the chat here, who have talked about making rewards on Splinterlands and using it to
renting out their cards. So you're referring to the economic metagame that's on top of the game itself. And the whole blockchain technology enables that because the assets here are actually worth actual money. So you're saying and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're saying there's a crossover point where players buy like $50 worth, and then they dive a little bit deeper. And then once they dive a little bit deeper to that 6 or 7 decks mark, they are now entering the real Splinterlands game, if you will, which is that economic meta game where they're renting cards and they're now playing like essentially 2 games at once, if you will. The actual autobattler card game style, gameplay, plus they're playing this meta game on top. And that's interesting enough for new players to get to become a hooked player rather than just a new player who dabbled in the game. Is that fair to say?
I think so, because there's a couple things that happen too, right? The amount that you interact with the game itself, when you're just playing the game by itself, you're doing a one-to-one interaction, meaning you're only seeing notifications and messages that relate to what you're actually doing right now. When you add that second piece on top of it and you have an active deck or, cards that are out on the market and you're receiving interface, you also have other things to check, that we start to see the stickiness really start to improve there. We have more reasons for people to come back, right? There was a interesting, and you probably know this from influence, right? It's about keeping people engaged and keeping people on the platform, right?
Yes.
So you're looking at metrics like, Facebook. When someone opens up Facebook, they would normally spend 2 minutes a day just checking in the morning and maybe checking once in the evening, right? If you write something about yourself, you're going to spend 15 times more time checking to see if people are agreeing with you or if they're writing comments or if they're liking what you said.
You want to see how many likes you got. You want to see whether it got traction and whether you're socially relevant. Similar to if you tell a joke, you're going to look around and see if anybody laughed.
If anybody laughs,
it's just human nature. Yeah.
Exactly. So when you start to have those types of engagements, and I think when you also start to see that you can learn this from the community, you become a part of Discord, you start to go to the town halls, right? Those all combined really create the type of community environment that makes people want to stick around and stay around and, obviously create more value in the game by being a player, but also contributing to the economy and the market. So all of those things combined, I think it's hard to wrap your head around because it's not necessarily very traditional to the gamers, but to, crypto native people, this is like, oh yeah, this is just a part of how the market works. Right. So it depends on where you're coming from. But again, those things all together, I think, create the type of stickiness that is going to take us to 500,000 million users a day. What do we got here? Illuvatars?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I was muted. Based on what you were telling me, I'm starting to kind of think of the Illuvidex at Illuvium as being its own game in and of itself. And a lot of influencers have kind of thought about it this way or talked about it this way to me. But the game of looking for land or looking for NFTs or shopping on the marketplace or thinking how you can arbitrage something or bring it back in the game and spreadsheet warriors and calculations. And it's this sort of min-max sort of gamer mentality of folks that played MMORPGs or other games where you can minimize certain stats, maximize others. And in this case, you're kind of min-maxing your economic game. So the marketplace in Splinterlands becomes its own video game, sort of, on its own. And then the Illuvidex in Illuvium becomes its own video game in and of itself. And that adds a layer, that's sort of an innovation, I guess you could say, or a new layer of engagement, let's say, on top of what traditional games provide. Some games have like in-game marketplaces where you can trade diamonds, coins, and various worthless currencies. But I feel like things become a bit different. The experience becomes different when you're not playing with play chips at the table and instead you're playing with real chips. All of a sudden it matters. So I have to ask you, that whole free versus, real money value sort of idea with new players, how much should we give new players for free versus asking for payment when they're first getting started? How is Splinterlands thinking about that new player joining experience, and then how much are you giving for free? Can you give too much for free? You know what I'm saying? What's the
absolutely.
sweet spot? How do you get to like the perfect sweet spot of I gave you enough for free, now you need to move over the line to move on to that $50 purchase and those 6 to 7 decks that you mentioned a moment ago. Help us understand free versus paid and that new player sort of process.
Absolutely. So, I mean, there's a couple things there that you got to kind of unpack and understand, right? First off, when you're talking about value, it's relative to where the individual is, right? So, $5 here is not that much, but $5 somewhere else could be a lot of money, right? So, when you enter into Splinterlands, you have to purchase a spell book. That spell book basically allows you to open up a Hive account, and that's basically where it all starts. We open up a Hive account. We basically place some cards in your pack for your initial card offering, basically, and you get started in the game. And that comes with a $5 purchase, right? That's the low barrier of entry that we try to create. And in that, we've noticed that it's helped us expand, not just here in North America, but basically everywhere, right? Because we tried to make it as affordable as we possibly could. Plus, we also have a lot of spellbook giveaways that can be used, as promotion. So yeah, they're $10 now. So sorry, I'd say $5, but it's $10.
It's all right, dude. You're the CTO, not the marketing guy. It's all good. It's all good.
So I'm also used to, because I'm also handing out a lot of the Summoner Spellbook giveaways. So, but that's basically where we try to limit our entry. From there on, we do have some rewards and some giveaways that happen. A lot of it happens inside of the actual economy ourselves. We have 3,000 guilds that are a part of Splinterlands. So I'm sure you guys have probably a similar number because you guys have hundreds of thousands of users on your Discord too. But those guilds are often incentivizing people to join their guilds by providing rewards to their community and to their members as well. So
right.
The key though is really that first $10 is the buy-in, right? But once you get past that $50 mark is where we get the real stickiness, right?
I see. So
yeah,
it's sort of your spell book is sort of and it's sort of like it's not just a starter pack. It basically unlocks features, a lot of features in the game. Correct me if I'm wrong, the spell book. And so it's more than, let's say, in a predatory mobile game, you'd get a starter pack that like you think has a lot of value, and then it turns out they just actually gave you a bunch of crappy items, but they said it was a 60% discount or whatever. In the case of your spell book, you're providing something that actually unlocks like actual features of Splinterlands, and it's not just a starter pack of useless garbage that you're now incentivized to buy something actually valuable later. Is that fair?
Yes. Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Yeah, exactly. So as it ties into it, what you're really trying to find is, and I think this ties into the relevant conversation that we're having is, our influencers or referrals for the, what you're going to look for is the dollar cost average per person that they bring into the, your cost per acquisition, basically for every new user. We look at it from every new spell book or from every, $50 purchase or more that we actually make in the game. Right. So I think that kind of hits on the point that we were talking about earlier. It's like, these are the things that we're trying to understand more. And these are data-driven narratives. Illuvium and Splinterlands should both be focused on the highest rate of return for those types of investments that we make or partnerships that we have.
I agree. You sound like you actually know what you're talking about. So if anybody wants to listen to guys like Patrick who know what they're talking about on the show, you can always go straight to illuvium.buzzsprout.com, and I'll be editing this episode and releasing it on every podcast platform, as well as all other episodes of Illuva Talks. Go to illuvium.buzzsprout.com, follow us on whatever podcast platform you'd like to listen to, and you can hear this man's sweet, sweet voice talk about that crypto stuff all day long, as well as our other expert guests. So we've kind of hit on it a little bit here in terms of retaining gamers and retaining players. And I just want to show everybody kind of where the market stands, if you will, right now in terms of players. Everybody always looks at DApp Radar. You're a CTO, man. How accurate is DApp Radar in helping people understand how active games are and how active their player bases are? Is this an accurate measure of which games are truly doing well, or is it inaccurate in some ways?
I don't know, because it depends. I mean, every single one of these exists on a separate chain, or they're running their own chains, right? Each one is basically, like we run on Hive, which is actually a very obscure chain, which originally came from Steam. If you remember Steam, it
Right.
used to be a blogging platform back in the day,
Hmm.
right? But I would say the things that you're going to probably notice is market volume, right? Like those are the things that you can actually look at transparently, because that's what, looking at on-chain data is probably the easiest and most accurate way to depict what's actually happening, right? So, if you're looking at on-chain data, and if you're actually pulling market data too, I think the coherence of those two balances is really going to be where you're going to find the absolute, truly accurate number. They're okay. It's a lot easier to do asset pricing than it is to do engagement, though. And I think you would understand the difference in that. Like if you're looking at the price of Bitcoin or the price of Ethereum versus actual engagement in activity, these are going to be things that are, going to be the real driver. So, however you want to measure that, I think is going to be different per application, per platform, per chain, right? It just depends on how much of an investment they actually put into trying to understand the, I would say the things that actually the metrics that are being used behind the scenes. So,
Okay.
um, does that make sense? Is that fair
That
enough?
that that does make sense. So DApp radar may or may not be accurate in terms of helping people understand how many players are engaged with the game, but maybe the financial aspects could be tracked depending on how it's connected with something like DApp radar. That makes sense. I have to ask you, Axion. So looking at this list, I don't want to harp on this DApp radar list too much, but looking at this list, right? The king of the last bull run was Axie Infinity, right? It was the big game that was going to change the world and blah blah blah. And as it stands right now, it continues to move lower and lower on the list in terms of the number of active players and financial activity that's happening in the game. And things like Splinterlands, what you're working on, have let's say 250% or so, 200% or so more active users than Axie Infinity does, even though they were the king of the space. So how did that happen? I want to dive into that with you. How are you so much more successful at retaining players than Axie Infinity? What have we learned so far and about Web3 gaming, maybe from players like Axie Infinity, about retaining players, getting them to stick around so you can actually build? What are your thoughts on that?
So large migrations of value are always going to be tough, right? Getting people to move and migrate from one chain to another is going to be really, really tough. That's a big one. The second one is really the economics of the game behind it. Let's be real, like this is still mostly crypto than it is gaming, right? We're about to cross the threshold, we hope, where it's mostly gaming and less crypto, right? But
Yeah.
asset value, asset retention, it doesn't matter what it is, because once there's a run, it's very hard to recover from getting decimated from a bull run, or sorry, a market run, right? Where people are just selling off assets, right? You have people who will lose a lot of money really, really fast and not be able to recover from that. So what happens is it leaves a really, really sour taste in their mouth. There was also, I think, too, security is always paramount, right? Axie did have some issues with, value getting stolen or being generated. I can't remember which it was
There
on
was,
their
to my
platform.
knowledge, there was a hack, and there's some funds were lost there, and that was a sad day for the crypto gaming industry. It was quite the loss.
Yeah, but so there's this thing that happens when you have things that are, let me say, just take off in a viral event, right? Axie probably grew too fast and had too much value up front for it to sustain uh, economically, right? There is, and this is also something that comes down from being a part of many bull runs, but also understanding how influence works, right? So when people start to make money on these platforms and they start to accrue value on these platforms, they start to talk about it and they start to share it with their friends, right? It becomes social currency. So what happens is other people buy in and they start to do the same, right? And so what you'll start to see is basically, it's a bubble forming. You're stacking layers and layers of people that are all sharing the same, experience about having a game that they can play that's crypto native, that earns value and has these things that allow you to earn rewards, so on and so forth. As that starts to build,
Yeah.
it becomes unsustainable. You reach an unsustainable point of growth that makes it very, very hard to maintain. So you're going to have some
Pause.
kind of.
Why is it unsustainable? That's the crux, right? You're bringing users in. That's good. You've got a video game. That's good. What's the part between the users coming in and the video game that's broken in the middle that makes, what lessons have we learned about it not having it not be sustainable?
So it's the growth over the actual value that's available. Does that make sense? So it's how
Yes.
much extractable value is actually plausible versus how much is actually in the ecosystem, right? And so when you don't understand those metrics and when the market is inflating itself to that extent, you're going to reach a point where somebody's going to be like, hey, you know what? I made a lot of money. I want to capture some of that value and return it to dollars, right? And once you start to do that, then you start to see the inverse of that market start to happen, where now people have already, excuse me, people were already taking value out as it was growing, but it's not catching up, right?
Drink some water, bro. Do it. Drink some water.
Yeah.
You're about to die. People
Fair
were
enough.
taking value out faster than it was growing. It honestly, that sounds, I'm not making criminal accusations, but that sounds kind of like a Ponzi.
Just remember, there's things that have to happen when we're doing this. Like, you're building a game, so you have the overhead cost of development, right? So there you're extracting value. You also have the cost of marketing. There you're extracting value. You have a team that's working. You have people that are doing operations. You have people that are doing finance. The people that are doing all of these things. Those are all ways that value is extracted internally. Then you have all the external elements. You have all the people who are, key core players that are making money, and they're doing this because they want to be able to earn, or they want to be able to make money doing something that they like doing, right? So those are all the things that you have to think about. If your new user retention or new user growth isn't outpacing that, then you're going to have some kind of inverse happen in your market.
So you're telling me that if a crypto gaming project gets popular and then decreases in popularity, it's not a Ponzi scheme necessarily, and it's not a rug? Wow, thank you for that insight. So I wanted everybody to listen to you talk about that. I set you up for that question with a leading, people accuse projects of being a Ponzi or a rug if the value decreased in the project. And look at every gaming trend there is. I used to study gaming trends for a living and do presentations on them, and I ran this gaming network where I would do talks to influencers on what to cover and what not to cover. I had this trend index and all this stuff. And the bottom line is 90% plus video games spike when they launch, or they get a moment of popularity, and then they starkly decline steadily over time until they reach about 10% of their launch peak. And then maybe they stay there, and then maybe they die out about a couple years later. There's a few exceptions of games that launch and then grow post-launch, but those are definitely exceptions, not the rule. And such titles include, sort of sensational games that hit a trend at the right place at the right time. Like Minecraft followed that trend. A lot of battle royale games like Free Fire on the mobile platforms, as well as Fortnite, followed that trend, where they were at the right place at the right time. They had a new business model or a new innovation or a new platform that they were on, and then they were able to skyrocket up post-launch. So Illuvium is attempting to do that in this space by doing new innovative things and making interoperable blockchain games. But that's the formula for upward trajectory after you launch, rather than the typical pattern that we saw with Axie Infinity, which is it launched, it got popular, and then it died. That's pretty much how every game goes, and that's not necessarily a Ponzi. Sounds like we're on the same page there. That's not necessarily them being evil. So I wanted to make sure we cover that and we be responsible adults and highlight that fact.
There's actually, this is, let's talk about data and just real quick on this subject while we're talking about this. If you're looking, so because we both come from an influence background, there was a type of signal that we would see, or a pattern that would describe social influential events that we would see in engagements, comments, as well as shares and distribution of content that carries over into crypto. And it's a pattern that we call, it actually comes from audio synthesis, but the shape of it. But when you actually look
Dude,
at
you're
this
such
pattern,
a CTO.
yeah, I know. So when you look at this pattern, though, what you'll see is the traditional pattern of value that matches the hype that comes along with projects in crypto. It's called the ADSR envelope. And the ADSR envelope, if you take a look at it, actually shows you what values will look like based on things that are, basically raised through speculation or through influence, right? People are speculating on a market, a value of a game or assets in a game. So the A stands for attack. That's the attack curve. That's when something takes off and something becomes increasingly more shared with people. Like it becomes more influential or viral, for example, right? So when you look at the A on the ADSR envelope, that stands for the attack curve. The more influential the people are, the higher and more parabolic that attack curve is. When you start to reach a point where the value of the community versus, the value of new players coming into the community, yeah, there you go. Okay, so look at that pattern right there. Now look at the ADSR envelope and just type in ADSR envelope. And what you'll see is something that looks just like that.
This is Axie Infinity on Google Trends, by the way.
Yep.
Okay, and we're going to look at ADSR envelope.
There you go. Just click on the images right there. Down. Yeah, that one right there.
What? That looks exactly the same. No way.
So if you look at, so this is where I thrive.
Okay, so this is the ADSR envelope thing he's talking about.
Yes. Okay. So this means that Axie had some things right when they launched, right? They had the right amount of influence and they had the right amount of value in their economy for them to hit the attack curve as hard as it would go. Okay. So when you start to see the decay, that's the D in ADSR. If you go back to the Axie Infinity, it's going to be more jagged, obviously.
Oh my gosh, dude. It's like identical though. It's like an identical pattern here. This is wild. That's
okay,
crazy.
Do me another favor. Go back to search Bitcoin historic prices and see if you can give me the all-time Bitcoin prices, right? And we'll look at when Bitcoin became very influential, and we'll take a look at the same exact pattern of Bitcoin prices. Now go to all-time, go to max. Just click on max on that chart right there. And then what do you see from 2017?
Oh my gosh, it's the same pattern.
Yeah, you see that? So you see from, but do you see it earlier though? Do you see the one before from 2017?
Here.
Yes. Yeah. All the way down to where it cuts off at like 2019, right there. So that whole episode is another ADSR envelope, right? So what happens is that is what it looks like when influence is the major driver of value, all right? Which means influence is speculative because they're speculating on what's going to happen. So that's why you have these crazy parabolic bubbles that pop. They'll sustain for a little while and then they drop off, right? So that's a problem, but it's not necessarily a bad problem to have. It just means that more people are coming in. The way that it interprets is not sustaining itself enough, right? There's not enough means for it to stay or become sticky. So there's an economic term that describes all of this, and it's called reflexivity, market reflexivity. And it was coined by George Soros back in 1985 in The Alchemy of Finance. And what he describes it as is economic phenomena that can be reversibly used to explain and predict economic phenomena that's going to happen in the future. So what happens is people look at the past to try to figure out what's going to happen in the future. And if something happens that resembles something that happens in the past, they're going to expect it to do what happened in the future. So when you start to see Bitcoin prices and Ethereum prices begin to move up or trail up, you're going to get this positive reinforcing factor where people are going to talk about it. People are going to share it. Here's another thing that's relatively human. We share our wins, we hide our losses, right? So this is just the natural progression of what we call social currency and the way that we interact with each other. That's why you get this pattern, right? So this is absolutely, fascinating stuff when you really start to dig into it. But when you see this pattern, just remember, it's not somebody pulling a rug. That's not what's happening. You're looking at the effects of influence on the marketplace and how it interprets into value, right? So that's what it is. And economically, this has all been very well, postulated. I mean, you can draw heuristics on this stuff. There's a lot you can do with it. From a data-driven perspective, though, when I see that pattern, I know that it was a viral event, that influence played a major factor in the growth. So yeah, you can't deny it though. It's
I can't
about as
deny
real as
it. Nobody's ever given a name to the pattern. I've just taught people to identify that pattern and to take measures to avoid having your company, your trend, your game, your brand follow that pattern. And now I've learned a lot today. I definitely want to have you back on the show. I've got one more question for you, and then we're going to need to wrap this up. So, and it ties directly into what you just said. You just talked about how influence has so much power over the market, right? Especially when you're doing influencer marketing, it's Web3 gaming, it's community-based like we're doing. I like to call it decentralized marketing, essentially. Individuals have the marketing power, not centralized platforms as much anymore, right? So the question to you is this, and this will be our final question. How much of player retention is the actual game itself versus the community, social, and influence aspect? We just went over this bananas pattern that basically predicts the social impact, the influence impact on a game's popularity. But where does the game itself come in here? You know what I'm saying? Just because everybody's talking about it just doesn't mean it's going to follow this exact pattern, right? Just because it's influence-based marketing doesn't mean it's going to follow the same pattern. So where does the game come into play here? Like if the game is terrible, is this more of a spike and drop? If the game is amazing, do we avoid this pattern entirely and just go to the moon? Like how does that work?
Absolutely. So what we're looking for is long-term stable growth, right? That's the key here. That's what the game should provide, right? Long-term stable growth. And that means that we are constantly adding to our bottom line as far as users, and they're staying. More people are staying than are going, right? Now, again, influence is a great way to improve that, but you will have some of that reflexive pattern to it, that ADSR envelope that we talk about, right? If you're doing a good job, you'll capture most of that, right? If you're not doing a good job, then you're going to see the value fall all the way back down to where it was again, right? So the long-term stable growth is the key core concept behind gameplay. We were not a large game. We also Splinterlands, you can look at Splinterlands asset prices. It went through the same thing, right? We had our...
don't worry. I was already looking at your Google Trends. So you followed the ADSR pattern that you described a moment ago. Notice how teeny it was here. And then notice how it got much bigger. This reminds me of Bitcoin's pattern, right?
Yep.
Over time, there's different amplitudes and kind of volume, if you will, in terms of the interest around Splinterlands every time your ADSR pattern happens. So presumably next time everybody in the world's interested in metaverse and crypto gaming again, let's say this pattern might be way up here. It may be much larger, 2, 3, 4, 5x larger next time you go through this pattern once more. That's pretty exciting.
It is. And so again, long-term stable growth is really the key to crypto, right? We got a long way to go. There's a lot of things that are going to happen. We need to be able to sustain through bear markets. The bull markets are nice, right? But that's not where most of us exist in crypto, especially if we're long-term patrons to the belief that decentralization is going to be good for, all of mankind basically. But you're going to see
Paul Barron makes a good point. What's up, Paul? The game must be in a constant state of innovation, like Fortnite. You mentioned earlier the constant updates. How are you guys thinking about, let's say, Fortnite doesn't just have updates. It tries to reinvent itself constantly. I mean, literally, Fortnite started out as a player versus environment fort building game, which I loved, and I was pissed that they dropped support for it. Fort building game where you fight zombies and you keep them from basically getting to an objective by just pumping them full of lead, putting them through a maze of death, and then they reinvented themselves into a battle royale. And then once they became a battle royale, they constantly reinvent themselves through marketing and new content and integrating new features and gameplay to where the game's always fresh. So at Splinterlands, how are you thinking about updates? Let's call that a minor to moderate sort of change to the game, to reinvention and massive major changes and updates and reinventing yourself. How do you navigate those two options?
Right. Also, I think trying to figure out as many different paths that lead to two different things. You're going to have growth in capital and you're going to have growth in user base. You have to think about both those independently, right? So if you're trying to introduce new features into the game to constantly reinvent it, that should be done with a cadence, right? You want people to know that you'll be, how do I say it? Constantly releasing new things so that they can expect updates, right? It's not always going to come in the order that they want, but they'll be able to know that we have invested a good percentage of our capital towards reinventing the game itself, right? And that's a large percentage of where all of our engineering goes. The other part of that, though, is trying to repurpose the things that we have. So we've built a very robust model for markets, for transactions, for staking, for interoperability between different chains. Those are all things that we've worked on. I think starting to take like an AWS or Amazon driven approach where you can start to sell these services very similarly and allow people to join, I think is important as well. But that's more on that's enterprise adoption versus new user adoption.
Got it. I'm going to take a comment from the audience, and then we're going to wrap this up and let you do some pluggy plugs there, Patrick. So here's somebody who's saying, gamers start to vanish when games don't have competitive content in the game. And so, what plans do you have for a competitive ecosystem? Obviously, Splinterlands is, to correct me if I'm wrong, entirely competitive content. Is there an opportunity in Splinterlands to not be competitive with someone else in some way?
So yeah, it is 100% competitive. And so if I think we were also talking about, it's 100% competitive. I mean, that's the idea. And we have competitions that are currently running. We are trying to increase the number of people that are joining guilds and trying to make guilds kind of the more prolific side of that, where people are coming in because they have more engagement with other users that they're familiar with and people who they would consider part of the same team, right? That's going to be huge. And that's definitely where Splinterlands, a majority of it is. People that are not engaged in content, though, people who are just participants, we actually have a large number of, I don't know how to classify them, but they come in, they buy, maybe $100,000 worth of cards, and then they just put them on the market and they just rent them, and they'll hold on to some packs and not sell them until the price of those packs actually increases over time.
Interesting.
So they're not necessarily players, right? But they are part of the ecosystem. They are providing value to the ecosystem.
Well, they're playing that economic meta game we talked about earlier. They're playing their own game. They're like, well, I may not have time. I may not want to be a player of this game in the mouse and keyboard and controller sense, but I am interested in playing the meta game with the market. And to answer that question on the Illuvium side, yes, we have competitive baked in as well, but dissimilar to Splinterlands, we've got the overworld experience that people can play right now in the beta test, but we've got, which is a player versus environment, where you're collecting resources and collecting Illuvials. And then we've got Illuvium Arena, which is specifically designed, yes, you can play versus, the computer, if you will, player versus environment, but there's also player versus player, which will be rolling out in future betas, and that is also being beta tested by thousands of players. So for us, we've split our game into, or our games into multiple experiences. Overworld, currently, player versus environment. Illuvium Zero, player versus environment. And Illuvium Arena, player versus player. But all three of these, similar to what Patrick was just saying, have the economic meta game involved with, things like the marketplace and collection and, renting out assets and that type of thing, if people want to play that game. So it's so fascinating to see multiple games in the same ecosystem kind of coming to life and creating a whole new multi-layered game. So anyway, Patrick, I love having you on the show. I've got to have you back. Everybody let me know what you think of having him back on the show in the future. You just blew my mind. And thank you for sharing all of Splinterlands trade secrets with us here at Illuvium. I'll let you answer to your legal team on that one. Just joking. If people want to follow Splinterlands and kind of check out the game you've been talking about, what's the easiest way for them to get in there? Go ahead and give them the pitch on that.
Yeah, so the easiest way to join, and if you really want to carry the conversation too, just join the Splinterlands Discord. Again, we're also a very large Discord community, right? I don't have the link, but I think it's just /Splinterlands is the Discord ID. And then if you actually
go to their official website, by the way, don't go to some bogus one. Go to splinterlands.com, right? Be real careful.
Yes.
Yeah, don't go to .io or any other alternates.
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, feel free. We're doing updates every single week in there. I wanted to say too, I'm like really in love with your guys' user interface. I just wanted to mention that because you guys did such a good job. It's beautiful. You guys did an amazing job. But yeah, and then also, I do a lot of this. Finance is actually my background. It's not so much gaming as much as it is. But, we do have some communities where we try to get more people into Web3. I think that's really important. That's where you and I met, was on Crypto Monks, where we actually had our first call. That's just mostly me trying to bring people into Web3. So if you guys get a chance, check out cryptomonks.io. We're trying to teach people project management, development, training, as well as market making. There's a lot of different things that we talked about.
Link in the description on that, by the way. All the links you gave me, I put below if you want to check out the other aspects of what Patrick's working on.
Yep, absolutely appreciate it. And then if you mind if I just put one more plug in there, which is trees.
Dude, plug it up, man. Just jam it in there.
All right. So finance is really, decentralized finance is a huge key value proposition for crypto in the crypto community. So if you guys get a chance, we're working also, I have a team of people that are developing decentralized debt markets. And it's called treesandclouds.com. So check it out. It's trees, TREES, and clouds.com. This is an agricultural debt market. Yeah, check it out. So feel free to, again, that's also another Discord worth checking out. If you guys are into market making or decentralized finance, just hit us up. We'd love to carry this conversation on. Andrew, I really appreciate it, man. You're an amazing speaker. I love what you guys are doing, and I would love to be back on if you guys would have me.
We would. I love it, man. You're just building stuff. You're building stuff with your full-time job, CTO at Splinterlands. You're building stuff with a bunch of side hustle projects. You just want to build in the space. We can all see your passion, and we love it. And I like that. Top games in the Web3 gaming space can come together, have a good conversation, and not be weird about it. I've seen developers and what have you in the Web2 legacy gaming industry have these rivalries and like not even be able to talk to each other and have it be weird with PR people involved. I love the fact that it's so decentralized here in our space. We are just free to say what we actually think as individuals working on projects and games, and we can help each other build the space because we actually care. Patrick, thanks for being on the show, buddy.
Thank you, buddy. Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Look forward to talking again. Take care, guys.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And everyone out there watching, this is the last Illuva Talks episode of the year. I've got guests lined up back to back to back in 2023. We will have some more live shows this year, including Illuvium Showcase and a special Illuvium Insider, if I can pull it off this year. But the holidays are coming up, and I want to thank all of you for watching our first 18 episodes of Illuva Talks. It's been amazing so far. We're getting over 10,000 plays and downloads per episode on average, regardless of who the guest is. Thanks to all of your support. I really appreciate that. Let's grow this show to be bigger than ever. Let's continue to lead the conversation in the space, and let's continue to build what we want the Web3 gaming industry to become. I promised you'd learn at least 2 new things this episode. Come on. There's no way Patrick didn't say anything you didn't know. Come on. Be honest with yourself. See you in the next episode, everybody.